بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And welcome to another session on funeral and funeral rites. And today we will be talking about the burial, the burial of the deceased individual. If you haven't watched our previous videos, then we have talked about the passing away, the ghusl, the washing of the deceased, and also the coffin, the shrouding. And now we're going to be moving on to the next stage, which is the burial of the individual into a grave and how that occurs. How do we carry the person and so forth. So alhamdulillah, as usual, we have Brother Hassan with us. Bismillah.
Bismillah. Carrying the deceased and the burial. It is sunnah for 4 men to carry the coffin, and each man is to carry it for 40 steps.
Yeah,
The
so
carry,
4 people each carry a corner, as he's going to mention, and you carry for 40 steps, meaning you pass it on to somebody else after 40 steps, right? So you're carrying it, then you'll go 40 steps. Once you've done 40, kind of pass it on to someone. Usually there's like 10 people carrying all at the same time, but the idea is for 4 people to carry at once and then pass it on as you're walking to the resting place. And it's not really organized in that way anymore, but that's really the way. So Bismillah, carry on.
the carrier is to begin from the front right of the coffin, carrying it upon his right shoulder, after which he is to slide backward and carry the back part on his right shoulder. Then he is to carry the front left side of the coffin upon his left shoulder, and is to conclude his carry with the back part of the coffin, carrying it on the left shoulder.
So if you want to get involved and do more than 40 steps, you can do 40 steps on each corner of the janaza, if you like, because janaza is used to refer to the body when it's being carried as well. So you start from the front left, which will be your right shoulder, right? Front left is your right shoulder, and then you'll go back to the back left, which is your right shoulder still. And then once you've done the right 40 steps, then you leave it. You might not get instantly to the next stage, but you'll move to the front left, front right, sorry, now, isn't it? And your left shoulder will take the front right for 40 steps, then move backwards, front, back right 40 steps. And then you'll have done 160 steps with the deceased from whatever place the janazah was done usually, and all the way to the graveyard, to the burial site, which could be a short distance, could be a long distance. There was no cars, there was no transport. It was done usually with people walking from A to B. Now you're going to say, well, they do the janazah in the masjid and then they do the burial in the graveyard and they take it in the hearse and the car thing, and they don't have much opportunity to carry the actual, exactly, they don't. So what does everyone do? Everyone wants to get in and just carry it for even 2 seconds or support it for a few moments. So that's fine, as long as you don't push and shove and you just get your little, as much as you can into aid. That's usually what happens. At the graveyard, maybe they have to park away or slightly away from the grave itself. You might get a chance to take part in that, but we won't really now in the UK setting really get a chance to carry the hearse or the janaza for very many steps. So if you can get in there and support, and you want and that should be left to family members primarily. So and what I'm trying to say is if several people are carrying it at once, that's fine as well. It doesn't have to be just 4 people. And when it was just 4 people, it was still people supporting and available in case somebody had to step out. So in terms of how many, and it says 4, it says 1 front left, front right, back left, back right. Now it's a case of as many as is suitable. It could be 6, 7, 8. And try and carry for as much as you can. But yeah, give other people a chance as well to get in there and carry it as well. It's the final rites of the deceased, is a reward for those who carry it. But yeah, that's how it's done. Tafaddal, Hassan.
It is recommended to walk quickly with the coffin without surging forward in a way that leads to the shaking of the body.
Yeah, so we go quick. So the idea is not to go very slowly and everything, is to go quick, isra, to go fast, to not rush, not be hasty, and also not go quick to the sense that all of a sudden there's this, as you sort of slowly walk fast or sometimes jog, all of a sudden there's this bouncy movement. If the body starts just moving up and down, no, that's too fast. We're not saying go fast. We're not saying here go really, really quickly. We're just saying here go quicker. This quicker isn't fast. Quicker is just like, don't make it a slow thing. Make it a swift thing, right? Don't delay basically. So don't allow it to get to a stage where it starts wobbling and moving around, and that's dangerous. That's wrong, and you shouldn't do that. Further.
Walking behind the coffin is superior than walking in front of it, just like the obligatory prayer is superior to the voluntary one.
Yeah, so scholars have differed. Where should you walk behind the janaza? Again, janaza here referring to the body being carried to the grave site, graveyard, or the actual grave itself, or should you be in front of it? Generally, it's better to stay behind, but of course, there may be a need for somebody to be in front, especially to receive it, etc. At the end, so there'll be some people in front as well. But yeah, generally, you all follow the procession and stay behind the actual janaza. And once you get to the actual grave side, at that point, obviously, some people will go in front, will receive it, will obviously practicality kicks in, but in general, better to stay behind the janaza. Tafaddal.
The audible remembrance of God is disliked when carrying the coffin.
Yes, so as you know, when we go and the final kind of sending off, people start reading zikr out loud and making remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In general, that is considered to be disliked. We don't. It's not a time for loud zikr. Loud zikr isn't bad, okay, but this is not the time for it, and it's not reported that the companions or this was ever mentioned as a thing to do. Loud zikr, what is to do and what is the whole purpose is to do reflection, is to do du'as for the deceased and to do zikr. Yes, so people will be doing zikr. So this was the kind of process of what should happen. Unfortunately, and it's really weird, I'm telling you, right? It's when we think about this, and I went to a janaza not too long ago, I won't say where and whose, etc. But one of the uncles there was really upset. He goes, "We never used to do janazas like this. They don't even carry the coffin anymore. They're just putting it on. They're wheeling it off, literally just on the wheels on that stand thing, and just wheeling. Because it's disrespect to the deceased. You put them on this, and you're wheeling them off in the middle of the masjid. You're supposed to pick them up, put them on your shoulder, take them to the car." And he goes, when they do the burial, they don't even, or they're all talking and look at that. Where's the whole idea of a loss of life and the remorse, and it's become a party to some people, get together for families at janaza. Sometimes the people just come to know that, oh, we're going to get to see a few family members, salam dua, nice, pay our respects and go back. We've forgotten the whole concept of the janaza. So what happens is people make zikr out loud. It's actually turned into a good thing, and scholars have talked about whether it's good or bad, etc. Because what happens is if people are just talking, and people talk dunya, people talk haram even during the time of the janaza and moving the body to the graveyard and talking to each other. Oh, bro, how's this? Oh, you got phone, this, that. It's just ridiculous. I've been, I'm around the men myself. Like I said, no particular individual or place I'm mentioning, but I've been there several janazas. Hassan and others, you will can vouch for this kind of stuff, right? People just talk rubbish, as we say. And so, what's better than just to let it be silent? Everybody just talk rubbish on the side and have their own little conversations, or engage them in dhikr. So if you do loud dhikr, they'll either be quiet and pay respect to that, or they'll join in maybe. They'll join in maybe a little bit as well. So, so what the ruling now is you commonly find. So, this is a book written by Imam Shumblali 400 years ago. What you find now, the scholars, the fatwas they've given, the understanding they have of this particular circumstance, is they actually say if it's nice and quiet and nobody's doing anything, no loud zikr, stay quiet. Okay, just leave it. Let people be quiet. That's the whole idea. Actually, that's the best thing to do. However, if people are making zikr, somebody wants to make zikr to stop from people from talking, the family members, then leave them be. If they want to make the zikr out loud, it's the family that's going to obviously be initiating that or leading that, or maybe close friends or whatever. Then let them be. You don't step in. Like we're just there as not bystanders, but we're there to participate as the community. We're not the family, we're not the close friends, we're not the ones in charge or responsible for this particular janaza. We all have a responsibility. I'm not trying to say we're not got no connection to this individual. We all may have a connection, but for that moment, for that time and place, it's his family, it's her family, it's their right and duty. So let them do and be as it is. If they're doing zikr out loud, leave it. If they're not doing zikr out loud, don't tell them to do it either. Leave them be. Let everyone do it as they deem best for their in, family member that they're sending off for the final time. And it mentions that. So if you look at the commentaries so Imam Shumbrai said that himself. He in his commentary said the same thing. He said if there's ladies crying out loud and they follow trying to follow, or you can see in the distance even, so to do zikr to kind of drown that out. One should one should try and remove anything wrong going around the janaza, but obviously it's a sensitive time, he says, so at least dislike it in one's heart, because if you do something or say something, it cause more problems. So when you see these things around janaza that aren't going well, like somebody saying stuff or somebody doing something, then just if it's not, it's probably best not to speak at that moment. Somebody just passed away, we're going to bury them. You don't want to kick off, you don't want an argument in Muslims arguing at a graveyard over something. So the wisdom, he says, is just dislike what is wrong in your heart and just carry on as best as possible. If there's methods to remove that particular thing that's going on, that's not good, then do so. But yeah, these things like shouting out and tearing one's clothes and that, we haven't talked about them much, but at any point they're not really good things. And if anyone does that, then it's better to kind of keep them to one side and away from the main procession, etc. Tafaddal, Hassan.
Okay. It is disliked to sit before the coffin has been placed.
Yeah, again, not like it's the end of the world, but yeah, because why? Somebody needs to help, somebody needs to receive. So you're sitting down. Well, wait a minute, and then at the same time, there's a deceased coming, and you're sitting down waiting for the deceased. Out of respect for the soul, stand. Let the soul be received. Let the body come. I mean, lowered into the grave. And at that time, one should be. You can sit before as the body arrives. You can stand up because some people go forward and arrive at the graveyard first, and they wait for the body to arrive after. So it's just etiquette with the deceased and with the whole process. So yeah, so it's better to be standing and receive the deceased in the janaza and then sit and then obviously carry on with the procession, with the process. But yeah, it's disliked to be sitting. Tfaddal.
The grave is to be excavated to a depth of half the height of a man's body or to the height of up to his chest if one was standing. And if one excavates the depth further, it is better.
Yes, so dig deep. You don't have to go too deep, but dig deep as possible. Half the person's height was like the minimum, and hence that's probably mentioned for that reason. But usually they dig the height of an individual, right, or maybe a bit more than the height. Usually now graves are standard sizes, and they go down about I think 7-8 feet into the ground, and that's it really. So that's the standard kind of thing. So that's good. That's brilliant. Yeah, 7-8 feet is fine. 6 feet is normally what they say, right? But yeah, Bismillah. Further.
The deceased is to be buried in a Lahad grave, not in the Shak type,
Yeah, so
as
I
it
think
is superior.
yeah, as it is superior and the sunnah. Yeah, so I think we mentioned it before, but I'll just remind everyone the lahad is and what the shaq is. Okay, so we mentioned last time that let's just draw the ground. Okay, if you have a grave like this, okay, so this is that's the ground, and then you dig a grave basically like that, right? And then this is roughly from there to there, 6 feet. Yeah, okay, that type of grave is called the shaq, what you just read as the shaq. And shaq literally means to split. So you split the ground and you made a hole in the ground and dug into it. That's called the shaq grave. Okay, the superior. So that's standard. That's what most of us will actually have be buried in, and it's most common. Um, However, the superior form is the lahad grave. Okay, so the lahad grave is the same thing. You dig a hole in the ground, but then as you dig the hole in the ground, you make a chamber. Okay, so this is the hole in the ground. What happens now? You dig a little chamber here, and that's the bottom of the grave, right? And the chamber is usually facing the Qibla. Okay, so in the other grave, you just sort of put somebody in the bottom there like that, and that's where they're going to be, and you bury them. In the Lahad grave, so this is called the Lahdun. Okay, the Lahad grave, you will place the deceased not here in the middle, right? But you will place the deceased here in the chamber, right? And they're facing the Qibla, and then slab it off, and then fill the grave with soil, right? That's the that's how the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, the Muslims in general. It's a sunnah as well. It's called a sunnah way of digging the grave, and it's superior because this was for us. اللحد لنا والشق لغيرنا. The lahad is for us, this type of grade. والشق, the shaq is for others. But it's perfectly fine. Both of them are perfectly fine ways of digging a grave and burying a deceased person. But that's just to explain the two different ways. This can't be done in most places and times now due to the soil. This soil here is very weak, it'll just collapse. Or it's illegal probably to dig this type of grave in some countries, they don't have this concept. Normally now, even in Muslim countries, so it's like I'm saying, it's not just maybe in the West, but everywhere they do the full. They don't have this part, so they just have they just have it like that. They just have the shaq, and the body goes in, and they they slab it over, or they put what we now have the wooden planks now, right? There's several of them that go in all the way to the end, and then the soil goes on top. Yeah, so that's how they do it, and that's what we're all probably going to receive. Allah protect everyone and grant everyone a
Mm.
honorable sending off. I mean, yeah. Over to you, Hassan.
Though if the earth is soft, and it's preferable to use the shak grave.
Yeah.
Um, the body of the deceased is to be inserted into the grave from the direction of the Qibla.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, the Qibla. If I go back to that screen and share that one again. So on the second one, um, right there. If you go to this one, sorry. Um, if well, I've deleted it all right, but there you go. There again. Um, quick one. So if this was the Qibla, then you pass the body in from this side as well. Okay. So the body's here. This is the Qibla. Remember, the Qibla is here, right? We pass the body in. So the people who are holding the body here, they will pass to people who are standing in the grave. They will receive the body, and then they will pass it into the chamber here. Now, of course, in today's day and age, they have the big box casket thing, right? And they have the ropes underneath it and all that. So you guys know the practicalities who've been to a burial and who've done it. It's not like this, but traditionally, it's what is obviously in the book is from a traditional method, is that the body is literally on a platform, and they're passing that to the to the helpers, people who are doing the burial, and literally physically holding the body, placing it into this chamber here, like a little thing here, chamber. And even if it was just the shock, same thing, you'd pass it in by hand, and they'd face the body here towards the Qibla that way, right? So it'd still be facing the Qibla that way, even though it's in the shock. It's just like it is today, and then they would put some form of slabbing over that, and then fill it in with soil as well. So that's what was traditionally done. Now we have a slightly different method, but it's all the same, inshallah. Further.
The person placing the body in the grave is to say, in the name of Allah and according to the religion of the Messenger of Allah, may the blessings of Allah be upon him.
Yeah, so you say Bismillahi, in the name of Allah, wa ala millati Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. As you place the individual towards the Qibla, the final kind of placement, the person should say, as you lower, so everyone should say who's part of the whole process. And as they're placing the deceased, they say Bismillahi wa ala millati, in the name of Allah, upon the religion, the way of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Tafaddal.
The deceased is made to face the Qibla upon his right side. Thereafter, the knot of the shroud is undone.
Yep. So remember, we mentioned the previous videos. Again, check them out. We did the coffin. There's 3 pieces of cloth or strings of cloth that are used to tie up the coffin for it not to spread open or stuff. There's no stitching. There's no clips. There's nothing. So these are there just in case anything gets loose or any movement occurs. This will hold everything in place. So it's 3 like knots with these strips of cloth that are used. So as you place the deceased into the um, Qibla, into the grave, sorry, you'll be facing the Qibla on your right hand side, that's obvious, right? On the right hand side towards the Qibla. And then at that point, before you do anything else, take off those knots. The knots aren't supposed to be a part of the coffin, they're just there to secure the coffin until the deceased is actually buried. Now they're in the grave and they're in the final position. Undo those. You don't have to take the cloth out, just undo the knots. You can take it out as well, but there's no need for it. Undo the knots completely so there's no knotting in the coffin itself. And then you move on to the next stage, which is placing the slabbing or the clay bricks or whatever is required, whatever they used in the olden days. Tafaddal, what is that?
Sheikh, just on that one, the unknotting of the shrouds, can that be done just before you place the coffin in the grave?
At any point you feel is it's not going to be a problem now, because the idea of having it is to secure the coffin. And with everything being in the coffin, in the box these days, there's not much risk anyway, to be honest. In the
Mm.
olden days, they didn't have that. They literally had a body on a piece of wood or metal or something. And literally, they would carry it like that. So they would sometimes strap it on as well. Literally have straps as well. They didn't have this box concept, and it's not really an Islamic concept. You'd bury the person literally with just their coffin going in. They wouldn't have a box around them or anything, right? So because of that whole concept, there was always a danger, quite a high risk, let's say, of something, coming undone or loose, etc. So to keep everything secure, they had the pieces of cloth, and they would then obviously at the final point take them off, because that's probably when it's all good to leave it. Now, of course, being everything being in the box, there's very very little chance, I would say, of anything really. I mean, other than that being something happening to that, which is not good. But yeah, but actually, the coffin coming off or undone, very 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 unlikely. I just can't see that happening anymore. So yeah, if you didn't even do them in the beginning, fine, right? If you did them and
Okay.
then took them off earlier, fine. They don't need to be taken off at that point. They just mentioned here that this is the last chance you have to take them off, so you have to kind of
Yeah.
take them off now.
And
Yeah.
what about putting mitti in? I don't know if you've seen it, but people sometimes put some soil in the the box in the coffin itself.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is you don't have to do that, right? But the idea is that there will be, even in the process we're going to talk about now, there may well be some soil that comes through and is around the body, and the body is usually on the soil, not in a box. So it's usually on the ground, on the soil, and then on top of that goes the slabbing, right? It's not in a box. So what some say is that, because you've got a box and the person's not going to have soil around them, you should put some soil within the actual box itself, etc. It's not required, it's not essential, but you can see the kind of principle behind it, and this, they smear the mud underneath the hole to let it around. It's fine to do that, because the idea is that the deceased should be buried within the ground and not in a box in the ground. Yeah.
Unbaked bricks and bamboo cane pieces are then placed over the niche opening.
Yeah, so that whole opening we said, like I said, you slab. I think slab it up, because they use slabs most commonly in England, or they used to. Probably expensive, so they went to the wood. I think some places still do the slabs, the concrete slabs. But here it says here you use clay bricks, so you shouldn't have anything burnt or fire has been used to go in there. So concrete slabs aren't the best of things. But yeah, they should have something like clay bricks, which is basically the clay without it being heated. So they're not, like fully solid bricks, the clay bricks. And bamboo. So bamboo is a type of wood. This was used to make sure that the person is fully covered. And then so soil doesn't go on top of a person. Okay, they're in a little chamber. They were covered up with bamboo and clay bricks. It's fully, done. And then the soil actually goes into the rest of the grave, right? So the soil goes not directly on top of the body, but to the side of it, right? So they got a little chamber in there. That was the traditional method. Now, because it goes directly on top, they actually put a full slabbing on, or full, the wooden planks, which stops the soil from even going below that, more or less, right? Very little soil probably gets through. And that's probably, how it's going to be for most of us. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with the wooden planks. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
The use of baked bricks or wood is disliked.
Yeah. So baked bricks and not wood is this like, but it really and by the way, bricks are used in some graves as well now. Actually, was in Pakistan once, and they were doing a burial in the local village, and literally it was crazy. Normally you say bricks, you mean, somebody puts a few bricks in there. Literally, there was a builder building a wall of bricks over the grave, and I'm like, what is going on? These Pakistanis, they do all sorts of stuff, right? People criticize them, and it's real. So I was like, no, I've got to find out what they're doing. So I spoke to them. I goes, look, we're not supposed to put bricks, and you're cementing them. You're literally building a wall over the grave before you even put any soil on top of it. What's going on? Like, this is just weird. This is not Islam, right? And they were like, calm down, calm down. They're doing it because this graveyard is very close to flooding, and they've had several graves, get flooded. They've had several graves, animals try and dig into them here in this area. That's one of the reasons you go deeper, by the way, before. If you go less deep, then animals can sometimes want smell and whatever senses and dig up the graves. It's happened. So what we do with these brick walls is to secure the deceased. It's not because and it's not visible. So once they've done the brick wall on top of the grave, they put soil on top of that. So it's not like a on top of the grave. It's in the grave itself, like the slabbing, the part here we're talking about, not on top of the grave. Like within the grave, when you close it, they cement it closed. I was like, wow. But yeah, so this is the reality. Practicality has to come into it. So in the UK, we've got these wooden planks, right? That's practicality today for us. In some parts of the world, they cement it and make it very secure, because they've had issues, because they know that there's a problem in this graveyard. Like, over time, obviously, the geography, whatever, it changes, right, and the whole land changes, and who knows what comes into the area and what animals are there. So there's various factors that affect those things, right? So if you see that, then it's probably a reason behind it. So yeah, I was a bit surprised, but once it was explained to me, I was actually quite concerned. I was like, so these people's graves are at risk and stuff. This is yeah, that's why we do it. The ones that are buried recently, there's been issues, and I was like, that's not nice, right? It was exactly, and hence you can understand why they actually cementing it closed. I was like, wow, it's never going to be open for anything, so it's not a problem. But yeah, but normally we don't use baked bricks and wood. Okay, wood and pure wood like normal everyday wood, and baked bricks like bricks that you buy from the DIY shops. We don't use those for a burial process. You might say I've seen it. Yeah, like I said, practicality is what goes on. It is what it is. Yep. Hassan, anything to add on that one?
No, is that, I mean, obviously we use, as you say, we use planks of wood here now. Is there any mm, alternative that you can think that people could possibly
So,
use?
I mean, clay bricks and bamboo is the alternative. But what it is, right, is I'm not too well versed in the regulations. Okay, there is regulations and law when it comes to digging a grave, burying the person in the grave. Can you take them out of the casket? Does it need to go? And you can, I think, right? I think there is, these rules are known to the people who are involved in the burials and so forth. I believe pretty much so. You don't have to bury in a casket. I don't know what you can use to as part of the burial, like you can add in these wooden things or not. Sorry, these other things like clay bricks or not. I'm pretty sure you can do most of it. It's just that it's not done. It's done in that fashion, and they do it like that, and that's what's done. So I don't know if it can be changed and you can go forward. It's hard work because it's not the norm, but I'm
Mm,
not sure what the rules and regulations are to say do this, do that. Speak to the people, speak to the graveyard workers, those work in the cemeteries. They dig them up. They probably know. They'll say read up here, ask here. They'll tell you the rules. Council will probably tell you the rules as well. And if you do something within the rules, and nothing wrong with that. Yeah, as long as it's within the rules, right? So I'm not going to say yes or no. And what if you can? Yes, go ahead. And if you want to do that for your family member, then Bismillah, I think is a good idea that you actually try to do the burial closer to the Sunnah and closer to the traditional method, the Islamic method. And here's the other thing, like I said, the problems that could arise from just doing that, we don't know. There's a reason why the current method is as it is. That secures the grave. It's safe. It's sound. It's cost effective. Whatever, right? If we did it a different ways, what would happen to the ground? What would happen to the grave? Tomorrow, your family member's grave is all sinking down because you use this, you didn't do that. So I don't know the rules and regulations, the effects these will have in the UK, in the graves here, etc. So it needs to be some, and there are experts in this, right? They know how it works, and they're the ones that probably need to be consulted and spoken to before you make those kind of decisions. Allahu alam.
okay, exactly. It is recommended to curtain the grave of a female, though not for the grave of a man.
Yeah, um, so as you putting everything of the deceased into the grave and so forth, and you're putting these clay bricks on, for a lady, the etiquette is to cover the actual area so nobody can see. This was done for I believe the burial of Lady Fatima radiallahu anha, and generally for ladies, the idea I was talking about this yesterday in a class. In Islam, we have this concept of ladies' affairs are built upon concealment. There's only one lady mentioned by name in the Quran. There's only we don't we ask our women to cover up, as they say, right? No, it's not that. It's to protect women, is to honor them, right? Is to show how precious they are and how much we look after them. And they can have to cover themselves all the time. They can do what they want most of the time. To be honest, it's just a few rules in public. That's all it is. Um, so yeah, so in that sense, here now at the grave as well, look at that. To honor the ladies, to honor them, we're not trying to hide anything, right? To honor them and respect them, there's always this concept of keep their affairs concealed from the eyes of others. So yeah, non-mahrams shouldn't tend to be around at that time. It should be a family members and so forth that are dealing with the primary things, and then there should be a curtaining, like a canopy type of tent around. It's common, you might see it in some countries when they do this. They even do it for men sometimes as well, but it's better for ladies because their affair is built on satr, on veiling and covering. And as for the men, doesn't really require it, but sometimes they do. Some men do it because the sun is hot days. They build a little thing just to keep the sun away. It's done in some countries. I've seen it at burials. But yeah, that's that ruling. Yeah. So now that you've placed the deceased in, now that everything's ready, the slabbing or the bamboo, the wooden planks are on. Next thing to do is what, Hassan? The Bismillah.
The grave is then filled with earth as to cover
Yeah.
for the deceased.
So you fill up to the earth until it's full, and you go a bit extra because, as those who do burials know, that the soil settles and goes down quite a bit after the burial. So if you just leave it perfectly flat, you come back the next day, it'll be gone like 10 centimeters lower. So you give it some height as well, okay, it's reasonable height, because it's going to go down, right? Then we do what, Hassan?
Grave is to be shaped like a hump and is not to be flattened into a square or cube
Yeah,
shape.
so we make our grave like that, right? Because there's a curve at the top, right? It's curvature, like a hump. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a massive hump like like a mountain or anything, right? Just a slight hump and curve, yeah. Right? Not flat, not flat, not just straight flat, flatten it off, right? And like I said, the curvature needs to be off the ground a bit because it's going to go down. They put water in, so when I remember burials in Pakistan, after the burial, they actually go and put water all over the grave, right, to make all the soil settle at the top and everything, right? It makes it better, all settled and in nice, it looks nicer, etc. It's just put water over grave, which is nothing wrong with that. You can put water over it, but it helps because next, and that's what happens in the UK when there's a few days of rain, the new graves tend to go quite down quite a bit because why, the soil gets softer, it goes and fills the gaps and rain gets in and everything. So that's why it's important not to just do an absolute flatness, but to have that hump which will go down over time. So some graves even over time go further down and you actually need to top them up a bit as well. In some climates, in some areas where the land is as such. So yeah, there's something to take note, and the people who do the burials will kind of be aware of that. So yeah, take their advice. Further.
To build something on the grave for beautification is unlawful.
Yeah, so just to build for the sake of beautification, meaning, make it look nice, to build something is unlawful, not good. Anything that's not needed, anything that's just purely extra, is not part of something that's needed. So if it's something needed and you change, you make it nicer, that's fine because you're not doing it direct. So directly just decorating the whole grave is not allowed. There's no point in that. That's not what it's for. It's not a place of decoration. So you don't decorate it. The next point that's going to be mentioned is it says that it's disliked to secure the grave or make it really strong after the dafn. Before the dafn, it's not a problem. And this doesn't mean the top of the grave. This means the actual grave itself, to start making it more solid, adjusting it. Once the grave is done, it's done. Leave it, right? The top of the grave, if it needs protection from animals, which it says there in the commentaries as well. um, Imam Abdul Ghani al-Maydani rahmatullah alayhi of Damascus mentions it in his Lubab Sharh al-Kitab, that in our times, and he's speaking about 100, maybe 150 years ago, about that time, I don't recall exactly, that it says you don't build on the graves. It says that the next, doesn't it? It says decide to build on the graves even to make it secure. He goes, however, in our times, like I said earlier, animals have been known to dig up the graves and people have been known to get in there. So to build something over the graves, not a structure like a mountain or something like people do, but just to solidify the graves, like the point you're making there. They put the marbling on just on the grave itself, or they put some kind of cementing on the top to secure it. Is okay because of the requirement of today and the situation we find ourselves in today. Traditionally, graveyards were left, nobody bothered people there or the deceased and everything. Right now, even the graveyard, people do all sorts there and go there and do whatnot, and don't want to find stuff, or the animals now, etc. The animals was something of the past as well. It's not a new thing. um but maybe they had more respect for the pious, and now we're not as pious, so they got less respect. I don't know. Allah Alam, there's many pious people today actually, so Allah knows best. But yeah, so that's the ruling, Hassan. I hope that clarifies it for those listening as well. Yeah.
To build something strong upon the grave after the burial, to strengthen it, is disliked.
Yeah, like we said, that was in the olden days. Now, obviously, for a reason, it's not disliked anyway. Imam Abdul Ghani al-Maydani rahmatullah mentions that. Tafaddal.
Um, there is no harm in writing on or marking the grave to prevent its signs from vanishing and prevent it from being desecrated.
Yeah, so it's well known the Prophet marked a grave to know that who the grave belongs to. And of course, it just makes common sense that you mark the grave, that you can go and visit it all the time. People from the family you come after can visit it and so forth. You know who your family members are when you go to the graveyard, and so forth. This makes common sense, right? So yes, you can put writing on. So the slab now, another that same here right now, you put a slab on. It should be a simple, straightforward headstone, is what they call it, right? Etc. But many people, they make it nice shape. They make nice writing on it, Quranic writing on it. So that's because it's secondary. It's not primary that focuses on that. So second, the primary thing is we're marking the grave of our beloved father, uncle, auntie, whatever, right? So they're doing something allowed. Nothing wrong with that. The Prophet himself did that. But again, what did he do? He put a little marker there. That's it. So really, we should keep it as simple as possible because it's a secondary thing and it comes alongside marking a grave. It's not bad, it's not wrong in a sense to make it a bit nicer or a bit more shaped. But at the end of the day, it's got to come from your own money and your own wealth, and that's your choice. If a family member wants to do that for their deceased relative, then that's their choice. It can't come from the money of the deceased, or it can't be forced on anyone to pay for that kind of thing. Burials can be expensive for families, etc. So if they want to keep it simple, that's the sunnah, and it's not a blemish on them at all. Unfortunately, things have turned around. People, they haven't got a headstone on their father's grave, or they don't care for their father as much as we do. Kind of attitude. That's ridiculous, silly. You mark the grave a simple metal plaque that says, so and so passed away this year. Placed there at the grave, securely. That's it. That's it. That's enough. If anybody comes, they can read that. Nice and simple, nice and easy. But there's nothing wrong with having a bigger one with writing on and stuff like that as well. So if somebody does that, don't criticize them as well. What I'm trying to say is one shouldn't criticize the other. One shouldn't say, why haven't you got a nice headstone? At the same time, you shouldn't say, well, having nice headstones is not really important. Don't do it. No, it's fine. Let people do it. It is what it is. It was Mark Grave. I mean, it's nice to have a little reminder who the person was, what they were known for, even, right? And some gravestones have nice lines of poetry as a reminder. When you go there, it reminds you of Allah. It's a little couple lines of poetry, and I've seen it on several graves, stuff, even on scholars' graves that you see this kind of stuff, right? So it's not wrong. So we shouldn't criticize it. We shouldn't say, but we shouldn't compare. So don't compare this grave to that grave to that grave and say this has got it, that should have it, that hasn't got it, that shouldn't have it. Like, just leave it. Whatever is there, let it be, and pay your respects. Yep.
It is disliked to use the homes as a burial place, for this is specifically for the prophets.
Yeah, so burying in homes is specifically for the prophets. Therefore, in the Hanafi school at least, it's disliked to bury somebody in their home. So say, oh, he's passed away, right? We're going to dig a grave in the house, bury them there. That's it. Mark that as a grave. That's not to be done. That's only done if a prophet passes away. They're buried where they are, where they left this world. So this is not something that is good. Other schools of thought, I think others have allowed it. So you might find graves in homes is not uncommon in certain parts of the world, but within the common understanding in the Hanafi school, housing private, areas where there's one grave or two graves. It's usually a graveyard. If you want to have a separate section or sometimes the scholars within the graveyards are marked, especially they've got a little structure around their grave to show that there's maybe a scholar there, etc. That was more common than to have them buried in their homes or bury somebody in their home. They would usually have an area in the graveyard that signified, if you go to Medina, for instance, there's the wives of the Prophet Sallallahu. We can't really go there, but they're there. There's the daughter of the Prophet Sallallahu. We know there's certain areas where there were certain people, mashallah, buried together, as that was because they were, and that was marked. Now it's still marked, alhamdulillah, so it's fine. You can do that, but not in the homes, right? Burying in the homes is disliked. Tfadal.
It is disliked to bury a deceased person in places termed al-fasapi,
Yeah, what does that mean?
like a cellar or a vault.
Yeah, so it could be it says here is كبيت معقود بالبناء يسع جماعة قياما ونحوه لمخالفته السنة. So what they say is that you may go into a cellar and there's a little chamber, right, and bury somebody there. So a cellar is basement, cellar, a little room. You don't have to be down in the ground. It could be next to the house, a room is next to the house even, right? Garage. You use that kind of area. No, again, it's not in the house. It's not outside the house. No, we don't bury people in individual special places and mark that as their graves and visit them there. Everyone's together in the Muslim graveyard, in the Muslim cemetery, and we all together. That's what we should do. So it's disliked to go against that. It's not haram, like end of the world, because end of the day, burial is fard. So you've done that, but why have you kept them so isolated from all the other deceased, right? The idea is for all the deceased to be one place, which is the Muslim cemetery, right? Tafaddal.
There is no harm in burying more than one body in a grave when there is a need, and between every corpse there is to be division with soil.
We had this before. If you watched our previous videos, we talked about if two people are in the same grave, then they're in reverse order from the janaza, etc. So this is what you do. You dig the grave deep, right? Obviously, because you're going to have more than one person in there. You bury the first person. You put soil on them. It's a reasonable amount of soil. Maybe a meter or so, like 3, 4, foot of 3, 4, maybe depending how deep the grave is. If it's 6 foot, then you got a person, have a couple of feet of soil, maybe, then you got another person, then you got another 3 feet of soil, roughly, right? So have a reasonable amount between an equal amount, or something that separates them. That's if you have to use one, which has happened sometimes. If you have to use one grave for 2 people, and sometimes they do it anyway, even though it's not a need, you can actually do it, and then you have a separation as well. It says here for a need, for the darura. Some have allowed it otherwise. The Prophet did this in the Battle of Uhud and other expeditions as well. Obviously, when a lot of people pass away, you're not in your home city in Medina, like you've just been from a battle anyway. You want to get home and stuff. So rather than dig one grave for everyone, individual graves, they would build or dig, sorry, graves for a couple of people at a time. It would reduce the work, wouldn't it? If you just do half, if you just do two people to one grave, you have half the work. So this is what would happen, and this is possible today as well. Um, so yeah, you cannot do that, and that's what you do. And then we'll stop there. So we'll talk about some other things related to burial, which may not be normal. So everyone normally passes away on land and then is given a normal shrouding, burial, etc. There are circumstances where it's not as normal, and just generally circumstances and rulings regarding the burial we'll come back to next time, inshallah ta'ala. See you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.